In a seemingly tranquil neighborhood, a chilling secret lurks beneath the surface. When Officer Marquez encounters a young boy playing alone in the park, his innocent question shatters the calm. This gripping tale unfolds as Marquez navigates the harrowing revelation of abuse at the hands of someone the boy's mother trusted. Now, let's jump into the story and uncover how it all started. Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. Ma'am, would you want to touch me the way my neighbor has been touching me? The words hung in the air like a thick fog, heavy and suffocating. Officer Marquez, a seasoned veteran with a heart as strong as steel, felt her stomach lurch. The little boy's eyes, wide and innocent, searched hers for a response. His small, trembling hand clutched a plush toy bear so tightly its stuffing threatened to spill out. He was no more than 7, with skin the color of a moonless night and a mop of hair that reminded her of her own son's when he was his age. The encounter had begun so mundanely. She was on a routine patrol in the quiet neighborhood when she saw the boy playing alone in the park, his laughter a stark contrast to the stillness of the evening. Something about the way he kept looking over his shoulder had made her pause. Then he had approached her, the playground swing squeaking to a stop behind him, and whispered his terrible secret. Her mind raced as she tried to process what she had just heard. She had seen many things in her line of work, but this was something else entirely. The boy's voice was so soft, so calm, that it was as if he were recounting a story from a book rather than his own horrifying reality. Her hand hovered over the radio at her hip, her thumb poised to call for backup, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the child. She needed to hear more. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice gentle despite the storm raging within her, "can you tell me what happened? Who has been touching you?" The boy took a deep breath and released it slowly, as if bracing himself for the weight of his words. "Mrs. Jenkins," he said, the name slipping out like a confession. "My mom's friend. She takes care of me when my mom works late. But she does things she's not supposed to." The color drained from Marquez's face as she pieced together the puzzle. Mrs. Jenkins, the friendly white woman who always waved from her porch, had been entrusted with this child's safety. And she had betrayed that trust in the most heinous way possible. The officer felt a burning rage begin to build in her chest, but she pushed it aside for now. Her priority was this little boy, standing before her, so vulnerable and brave. "What things?" she asked, her voice steady, though she could feel the tremor in her hand as she reached out to comfort him. "Things that make me feel weird. She touches me and sometimes it hurts," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She says it's our secret. She says if I tell anyone, she won't be my friend anymore." Marquez's eyes narrowed, and she took a moment to compose herself. "You're doing the right thing, talking to me," she assured him, her voice firm. "This isn't your fault. You're very brave." The boy looked at her with a flicker of hope. "Does that mean you'll make her stop?" Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. "Yes," she said, with a conviction that would have made the strongest man tremble. "I'll make her stop. And I'll make sure she can't hurt you or any other child again." The weight of her promise was palpable, a silent vow that hung between them. She knew what she had to do next. The sun had set, casting the playground in a somber darkness, and she had a feeling that the night was about to get much, much darker before the dawn. "Can you take me to your mother?" she asked the boy, her voice measured and calm. "We need to tell her what happened." He nodded, his grip tightening around the bear. They began to walk, the soft thud of their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The journey felt like an eternity, each step bringing them closer to a confrontation that Marquez knew would change all their lives forever. The boy's mother, Mrs. Harris, was a single parent who had worked tirelessly to provide for her son. The bond between them was clear, and the thought of what this revelation would do to her was almost too much for Marquez to bear. She had to be strong for both of them. When they arrived at the small, well-kept house, the boy's mother was in the kitchen, the smell of dinner wafting into the night air. She looked up, a tired smile on her face, as they approached. "Hey, baby," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. What's going on? Marquez took a deep breath. Ma'am, she began, I need to talk to you. It's about your son. The smile slipped from Mrs. Harris's face, replaced by a look of confusion and concern. Is he okay? She asked, her eyes darting to her son. Marquez nodded. Physically, yes. But there's something he needs to tell you. Something very important. The boy looked up at his mother, his eyes pleading. Mrs. Harris knelt down, her heart racing. What is it? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Harris's face crumpled with anguish as the full weight of the horrific truth sank in. She felt as if her heart had been ripped from her chest, the pain so visceral and overwhelming that she could scarcely draw a breath. Her dear, sweet boy, her precious child, had been violated by someone she had trusted, someone she had welcomed into their home, someone she regarded as a friend. The betrayal was almost too much to bear. Tears streamed unchecked down her cheeks as she struggled to comprehend the magnitude of her son's suffering. How could she have been so blind? So foolish? She berated herself, consumed by guilt and self-recrimination. If only she had seen the signs, if only she had protected him. The knowledge that she had failed him, her most sacred duty as a mother, cut her to the core. Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. Trembling, Mrs. Harris reached out a shaking hand, desperate to offer some comfort, some solace. But what could she say? What words were adequate in the face of such a heinous violation? That monster, she choked out, her voice thick with anguish and rage. How could she? The fury was palpable, a white-hot blaze fueled by the overwhelming desire to shield her child, to undo the unforgivable wrong that had been done to him. In that moment, Mrs. Harris felt utterly powerless, her maternal instincts to nurture and protect rendered useless. All she could do was draw her son into her arms, holding him close as they both wept, praying that somehow, someway, they would find the strength to heal. The anger was a living, breathing entity in the room now, pulsing with every beat of their hearts. Marquez knew she had to act quickly. She called for backup, her voice professional despite the horror she felt. The sound of sirens grew louder as they waited, the boy clutching his mother, who was now sobbing openly, and Marquez standing guard, her hand on her gun. When the other officers arrived, she explained the situation with the precision of a seasoned professional. Her voice was calm and collected, betraying no hint of the panic that must have been coursing through her. She recounted the events, painting a picture of a misunderstanding, an innocent interaction blown out of proportion. That poor boy must be confused, she told the officers solemnly. I would never do anything to harm a child. He's simply mistaken, I'm the victim here. The officers listened intently, their expressions unreadable. They nodded solemnly, their faces etched with the weight of the accusations. Two of them then made their way to Mrs. Jenkins' house, their steps heavy with the gravity of the situation. It didn't take long before they returned, leading the woman out in handcuffs, her eyes wide with disbelief and fear. This is a mistake, she cried, her voice high-pitched and frantic. I haven't done anything wrong. That boy is lying, I swear it. She pleaded with the officers, begging them to see reason, to understand that she would never hurt a child. But her protests fell on deaf ears. As she was led away, a mix of emotions flickered across her face: fear, confusion, and an underlying current of desperation. Perhaps, in her mind, she truly believed she was innocent, that this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. Or perhaps she was simply a skilled manipulator, willing to say anything to avoid the consequences of her actions. Regardless, the weight of the accusations hung heavy in the air, a cloud of uncertainty and unease that would linger long after she was gone. But the little boy's words had painted a picture that no one could unsee, and as she was led away, the neighborhood watched in stunned silence. The illusion of safety had been shattered, leaving only the cold reality of a trust betrayed. Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. The charges were severe: child molestation, grooming, and a string of other offenses that made Marquez's blood boil. Mrs. Jenkins had no explanation that could justify her actions, no excuses that could fill the void she had created in the heart of this family. The boy would need help to recover from this, and Marquez made sure that the necessary resources were provided. But the road ahead was long and painful, full of therapy sessions and court dates, of fear and doubt and the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. The story didn't end that night. It was just the beginning of a journey that would test the strength of their bond and their capacity for forgiveness. But in the face of such darkness, the boy's courage shone like a beacon, a reminder that even the smallest voice can bring about the biggest change. And as they stood together, the mother, the son, and the protector, they took the first step into the unknown, hand in hand. The whispers of the neighborhood grew louder with each passing day, a symphony of accusation and disbelief that she could never silence. She had been grooming the boy, showering him with attention, gifts, and the illusion of love. But it was all a twisted ploy to satisfy her own sick desires. The mother, unable to fathom the depths of her neighbor's deception, raged against the world. The woman she had confided in, who had held her baby in her arms and promised to keep him safe, had instead become his monster. But amidst the anger and pain, she found a quiet determination to ensure her son's future remained untainted by this tragedy. She would fight for him with every ounce of strength she had, and she would not rest until justice was served. The boy's recovery was a slow dance of progress and regression. Some days, he would laugh and play as if nothing had ever happened, the sun shining through his smile. Other days, the shadows would creep in, and he would withdraw into himself, lost in the memories he wished he could forget. But through it all, his mother remained steadfast, her love a lighthouse guiding him back to safety. As the case progressed, the boy's mother had to grapple with the truth of what had been done to her son. She had to find a way to listen, to support him, and to help him understand that he was not to blame. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience and understanding beyond what she had ever imagined. But she was a mother, and love is the most powerful weapon in any battle. The trial was a spectacle, the community torn between those who condemned Mrs. Jenkins and those who still clung to the illusion of her innocence. She sat in the courtroom, her eyes downcast, as the boy bravely recounted his story to the jury. His voice was small but clear, each word a nail in the coffin of her lies. The woman had no defense, no justification that could hold water. She had used her position of trust to manipulate and hurt a child, and now she would pay the price. Subscribe now to keep enjoying the content. The verdict was swift and unanimous, guilty on all counts. Mrs. Jenkins was sentenced to a lifetime behind bars, a punishment that could never truly atone for her crimes. The boy's mother, though relieved, felt the weight of a battle won at too great a cost. She knew that her son's healing would take time, and that every day would be a battle against the echoes of his past. But she also knew that together, they could conquer any obstacle. They had survived the unspeakable, and in doing so, had discovered a strength that neither had known they possessed. And as they left the courthouse, the sun peeking over the horizon, they knew that they had not just faced their fears, they had shattered them. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and the months into years. The boy grew, his spirit unbroken, his smile returning more frequently as time marched on. He learned to trust again, to love without reservation, and to find joy in the little things. The scars remained, but they were badges of survival, a testament to the resilience of a mother's love and the power of a child's courage. The story didn't end there, in that quiet neighborhood with its secrets laid bare. It continued to unfold in the hearts of those who had been touched by it, a reminder that in every dark corner, there is a voice waiting to be heard. And in every act of bravery, there is a spark that can ignite change. While trust is important in relationships, it's necessary to balance it with verification. People's actions and behaviors can change over time, and sometimes people may hide intentions or actions that are harmful. Continuing to check in and verify can be a safeguard against unexpected harm. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to help our channel grow.